Hey guys, SMZ here and we are back playing Raid Shadow Legends. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. I've been playing Raid for a long time and I love sharing gameplay tips, guides, and let's plays to help you get the most out of the game. So stick around and let's dive in. Today we are going to start a new series called Champion Through the Years. In this series, we are going to look at a particular champion and we are going to see how the champion has fared through the years, from the time of its release to today. And we are going to see how the champion has performed in different areas of the game and if the champion is still relevant and worth building out today. So, the champion that we are going to look at today is none other than Rotos. Rotos the Lost Groom, the undead with a love story as sharp as his scythe. Released in February 2020, this guy did not just walk into Raid Shadow Legends meta. He marched in, and he marched in like he owned the place. Today we are diving deep into Rotos' journey over the years, from meta dominance to his battles with power creep, and whether he has still got a place in the arena. Spoiler alert, it's a bumpy ride, but hey, every legend has their ups and downs. Let's set the stage. 2020. Rotos dropped as a fusion champion, and honestly, he felt less like a champion and more like a cheat code. He had an incredible kit. His A3, Fated Destruction. It ignores defense, block damage, and even unkillable buffs. Why stop there? Maybe he should ignore my opponent's will to fight too. He has an incredible passive, Spurn Oblivion. The passive was the cherry on top of his absurdly powerful kit. Whenever Rotos took damage exceeding 50% of his max HP, he just shrugged it off. That, combined with his extra turn mechanic, made him nearly unkillable in his prime. He also has an amazing A2, Vitality Plunder. He'd knock down enemy HP and heal himself while doing it. Oh, you thought you had him? Nope, he's back. And angrier. But let's be honest, the real power couple here was Rotos and his lovely bride, Sifi. Together, they were an arena nightmare. Sifi kept him alive and free of debuffs, while Rotos just wreaked havoc and wiped teams one side swing at a time. The year that he was released, 2020, Rotos ruled Platinum Arena. If you weren't running him, you were probably losing to him. He was dominant and everywhere, not just in Platinum but also in Gold Arena. And let's not forget his other uses. He was just as dominant in other areas of the game. People used him for campaign farming against specific Doom Tower bosses, as well as faction wars. This guy was literally everywhere, and he was considered one of the most broken champions in the game. As September 2020 rolled around, Rotos experienced the first change to his kit, a nerf. And while it did tone him down, let's not pretend it made him weak. This change included a change to his passive skill Spurn Oblivion, which was now capped at one use per enemy turn. Yes, it reduced his survivability slightly, but the ability remained is still a core part of his kit, which still made him very difficult to kill. The cooldowns and damage scaling were also adjusted, but his ability to ignore defense and block revives stayed intact. And that, well, it was still devastating. Even with the nerf, Rotos continued to dominate in 2021. If you paired him with Sifi, you could still bulldoze through most teams. Some counters or champions who challenged him slightly, like Duchess Lilitu and Tormund the Cold, started appearing more often. But Rotos was still incredibly strong. Let's call it like it is. He was slightly less broken, but still top tier. 2022 was the first time Rotos started to be challenged with his position at the top of the food chain. In early 2022, he got a slight buff to Vitality Plunder, his A2, making him more effective against bosses like the Scarab King. While this did not shake up his arena game much, it did give him a second win in PvE content where he had not been as dominant. In the arena, however, his dominance started to be challenged. Champions like Candraphone and Mithrala Lifebane entered the spotlight. Candraphone, or Candy, his extremely hard-hitting A1 could break through Rotos' passive and kill him in one hit, sometimes even on a counterattack. This made him a terrifying opponent for Rotos. Mithrala, with her petrification passive, caused issues for Rotos as well, turning him into stone and making him rethink his entire undead existence. Completely immobilized and unable to counter, Rotos often found himself more statue than side-swinging terror. This made it far harder for him to dominate in battles. With the debut of Live Arena and it gaining traction very quickly, Rotos found a role as a specialist against revive-heavy setups. If you could draft him into the right matchup, he still delivered devastating results. By 2023, Rotos started feeling the sting of power creep. Champions like Marichka the Unbreakable and Darius the Fierce stormed the meta, leaving our poor Lost Groom scrambling to keep up. Ultimate Death Knight, the big undead teddy bear with a passive that redirected single target nukes like Rotos into harmless stickles. Combine that with Stone Skin gear and UDK became an unbreakable wall. Stone Skin revolutionized the meta, granting champions immunity to damage and debuffs for a set number of turns. Ultimate Death Knight in Stone Skin wasn't just tanky, he was downright infuriating to deal with, forcing players to rethink their offensive strategies entirely. Armans took things even further, becoming the single most oppressive champion in the arena. With his ability to stun, lock out opponents, and even turn champions into sheep, Armans made it nearly impossible for Rotos or basically any other nuker to thrive in the meta. Motu Macabre was perhaps the most terrifying counter, with his secret skill Peril. It outright bypassed Rotos' passive and survivability, obliterating him in one fell swoop. Him in Stone Skin was even crazier, and pair that with Ultimate Death Knight and you have a deadly combo. Motu became a nightmare to face in the arena, forcing Rotos' players to tread very carefully. And lo and behold, 2023 brought one other thing. Yes, Mythical Champions. Mythical Champions brought an entirely new level of power to the game. With abilities that overshadowed Rotos' kit, they made him feel like a relic of the past. These champions weren't just powerful, they were designed to outclass older ones, forcing players to rethink their strategies entirely. Rotos was still a counter pick for teams relying on revivers like Duchess, but let's be real, he wasn't headlining any Platinum Arena teams anymore. Facing a Candraphon, Ultimate Death Knight, or Motu Macabre in defense, you might as well pack up and try another team. In Live Arena, Rotos struggled against tanky Stone Skin comps, mythical champions and powerhouses like Motu Macabre, who could endure and punish his attacks. Still, he shined as a situational pick when the enemy underestimated him. By 2024, the meta had stabilized somewhat after the chaotic changes of 2023, but Rotos remained a shadow of his former glory. Yet he carved out a niche in specific setups and continued to deliver immense single target damage in the right hands. The new king and queen duo of Narcissus and Ancora quickly became the most dominant pair in both Classic and Live Arena. The introduction of this deadly duo reshaped how battles played out in the arena. Together they turned many battles into a one-sided affair, leaving little room for Rotos to shine. Stone Skin continued to dominate, requiring careful drafting of buff removal or crowd control champions to deal with these tanky defenses. Rotos often struggled without proper team support to crack these setups. Mythical champions also continued to dominate the meta with their overloaded kits, pushing Rotos further into niche territory. However, their prevalence also created opportunities for Rotos to thrive in carefully tailored teams, where his single target damage could be maximized. In Live Arena, Rotos remains an excellent damage dealer. Against fragile, revive-heavy teams, he can still dismantle opponents with ease. While he's no longer top tier, his power in niche scenarios makes him a valuable pick for strategic players. Against tanky Stone Skin based teams, Rotos often requires substantial support and clever drafting to avoid being nullified completely. So, with all that said, is Rotos still worth it in 2024? The answer is yes, but with a big asterisk. He's no longer the game breaking monster he once was. But in the right hands, with the right build, and with the right team, he can still pack a punch. Thank you so much for watching. If you've got your own Rotos stories, please drop them in the comments below. And hey, maybe give him a spin in live arena. Just don't forget to ban Ultimate Death Knight first. What other champion would you like to see this series continue on? Please leave that in the comments as well. Thank you very much and see you next time.